So today I want you guys to turn to Genesis 19. So let's examine the past to better understand the nature of God. So in Sodom, it was the custom of having new people to the city to be introduced to its culture. Its culture wasn't necessarily what we would consider positive. In fact, it's quite clearly condemned inside the Bible. But this was the world for them. That was their area, their city. It's what they knew of it. So, to a believer, even though all authority is from God, they still learn to navigate that setting. Wasn't very many of them. In fact, we're going to examine that. But there was some. So, when push comes to shove, and they got made to choose to side either with God over their own brethrens or their brethrens over God, well, they made a decision. Some of them even said that you're not loving your neighbor by not following your culture. I would be missing the point. It's not very loving to encourage your neighbor to do rotten things. It's not very loving your neighbor for you not to put God first for yourself. Well, let's examine a bit what happened, okay, folks? So we're going to read Genesis 19, part 1 to 3, okay? So, and the two angels came to Sodom at evening, and Lot sat in the garden, the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face towards the ground. And he said, Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your slave's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early and go on your way. And they said, No, but we will abide in the street all night. Now remember, guys, this is angels, right? And he pressed upon them greatly. And they turned in onto him, and entered into his house. And he made them a banquet, and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. So take note that even though an angel asked one thing, Lot was wise in his response. He steered them towards something that would be better for them, which the angels knew all along, by the way. And that definitely showed proper respect to the Lord and his servants. Now, once that arrive, let's examine what happens next. Okay, so this is Genesis 4 to 9. Okay, folks? Right here. So, but before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot, and said unto him, Where are the men who came into thee this night? Bring them out unto us, so that we may know them. And Lot went out, just before that, so that they may know them. The way the culture did it is I'm not going to mince words, in a very sexual manner, very sinful manner. So let's continue at 6. And Lot went out at the door unto them, and shut the door after him, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold now, I have 2 daughters who have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for they have come under the shadow of my roof. So the man is offering his women to men to do it rightfully. Now, you could easily assume the worst, or you can assume the best. Because this is saying to do good, right? Number 9. And they said, Stand back. And they said again, This fellow came into sojourn, and he has lit himself up as a judge. Now we will deal worse with thee than with them. And they did great violence to the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door. So take notice that for taking the stand, they beat him up. They beat up other people as well, anyone that defended. Great violence came upon him. Great consequence came onto him. It wasn't easy. He was mocked, insulted, and beat. And they tried to reinterpret his belief to accuse him, to condemn him. But is that the end of the story? Think not. Lord's wise, and his servants are holy. See what happens next. So, 10 to 11. Then the men put forth their hand, and pulled Lot into the house with them, and shut the door. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. So let's examine that again. Did the Lord smite them with lightning at that point? No. Did he smite them with anger or violence? No. He made it so that they couldn't see what was right in front of them. Evil could not see the action of good. They can't explain it. They can't see it. They don't notice it. That's how it is. So, going back to that. So the Lord, like I said, protected his servants. He gave no quarters to those that would attempt to pervade them. He made them blind, right? Now, if the Lord would have went with a trail of bodies at the place, wouldn't that definitely have led the city to the person that we're trying to protect? So that would have been counterintuitive. But making them blind, that was pretty wise. Because they couldn't see, they weren't blind to everything. They were blind to him and to his presence. Safety was able to be achieved, at least momentarily. So in the end, this demonstrates the importance and the value of not only wanting the Lord in our homes, but also to keep his name holy while in our presence. We should always strive to ensure that our first priority is always loving God. Loving your neighbor is linked to this, but you can't have one without the other. You can't love your neighbor if you don't love God as your priority. You have to love God. Because one without the other, it's no good. Well, it's not that it's no good, it's that it's not complete. It's not necessarily good either. Just saying. Now, there's pressure and tremendous consequences for not choosing what the world wants in this story, okay? The Lot gets beat up. He's only trying to keep the angels pure and the Lord pure. Not trying to bring violence upon the world or anything, but the world still wants what it wants. So the reverse is true, that choosing God also carries a consequence. Because he chose God, the angels protected him. And it lists the consequence. So as a good Christian, we get to learn what truly motivates God. So while what we are told in this story isn't instructions addressed to us directly, okay, we're not commanded to relive the story of Lot. Now, we're not commanded. It might really well happen. That's not the point. It's that this is not meant as instructions for us. It's meant as instruction first for that era, so that people, but as a source to explore and better understand the values of God, what's important to God, and our history with God. Because humanity, we have a history. And that history is documented in the Bible. We have established everyone who chooses God gets challenged in their lifetime, under great threat, and usually at serious consequences for their actions. It is at a common core message throughout the whole Bible, from Genesis all the way to Revelations. There is a consequence to choosing God. It's not necessarily going to be a pleasant one for us. But that's a good thing. It is a good thing to follow the will of God, no matter the cost. So we know this as a sign of what will happen in our lives. Living for God is not a promise it will be easy. It's in fact, it's consistently demonstrated that it's not. So a lack of adversity should be very problematic to us, as it would lead credence that we aren't doing anything that needs testing. So all the faithful get tested. The rest of us, not necessarily is the same. So my question to you is this, folks. When is the last time you yourself have faced persecution at great risk to yourself? And the follow-up question, is your answer problematic in light of what we know happens to true believers? You know what to expect if you become a true believer, what will happen. Is that happening in your life? And if not, is this problematic to you? So please feel free to comment in the comment section, and we'll be taking a few questions that are relevant to this. And we'll give it a few minutes to see if anyone wants to take a shot at it. So we're going to have a short 5-minute break to give people time to think up on what we discussed and to think up questions that they would like to ask. And in 5 minutes, we will be back and we'll discuss them. See you guys shortly, guys. All right, folks, I am back. All right, so the first question that we have is from Pastor Blatz. How would we relate today's sermon? Well, for today, so it being today's sermon. The way that I would relate it is right now, we're being asked as Christians, what part of God are we willing to sacrifice for the good of the world? The situation is, now I'm not commenting if this is a valid concern or not. There's a concern with COVID, and that's been addressed by the government by demanding that we all stay at home, that we don't fellowship with each other in person, that we don't share, that we don't gather in two or three and in our midst find Jesus. No, 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 no. We're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to do it through Zoom indirectly. That we're not supposed to share bread and wine together, the Eucharist. Because if we do that, they're going to find us to be bad people, really, to be mocked, to be ridiculed, to be arrested, or fined. In fact, it has started. It has started. Lots of people have had it happen. That's very similar to a common theme throughout the Bible of the world having a judgment. Sometimes it's valid, sometimes it's not. That's not the point. The point is the world is asking, do what we want first. The way that you worship, we don't care. We want you to do it the way we want, so the world comes first. We want you to sacrifice part of your obedience to God so it fits. Now, the world is quick to point out that Christians should really want to do it. They need to listen to authority. And if the authority tells you that you're not allowed doing this, obviously, whatever they say goes. So if they say that you're not allowed fellowshipping and you're not allowed to have the Eucharist, obviously that's what you're supposed to do. That's what they're telling you. But is that what the Bible is telling us? Well, the Bible is telling us repeatedly, like with the story with Lot, how important it is for us to do what's right, even if it means that we're being persecuted. In fact, the fact that we're being persecuted is a common trend throughout the whole thing. True believers are getting persecuted. Notice that most of the people that are not identified in the Bible as true believers tend to not get into that much trouble. The ones that get it the worst, that get beatings or they get martyred or whatever, are all those that go of, I don't care what the world says. I'm going to do what God wants first. What Jesus tells me is right, that is what we're doing. Praise the Lord. If we would have followed authority, obey lawful authority, and we would have interpreted it as meaning obey everything, then there's no need for revelations because, well, there wouldn't be anyone that would resist a word of authority that are Christian, right? Everyone would go, oh, government told me, put a mark on my hand. I guess this is cool. Let's do it. The government said it's good. It's good by God. No, 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 no. It's clear in Revelations that the only way out of this, with a good solution, is to resist that. To resist. It's common through the stories with Lot. He resisted the world. He got beat for it. There's consequences. The early apostles, Rome banned Christianity. Yet they still persevered. They did it in secret with home churches because they lived for God. They wanted to get along well with the world, yeah. They want to obey all the legal authorities. Yup. But a legal authority will never demand that you put them before God. There's so much healing, as Pastor Blatz is pointing out, so much healing in gatherings and being in a family. I'm not saying we have to have a large gathering full of people in a mega church. That's not what I'm saying, folks, at all. What I'm saying is what's in the Bible. The Bible says, you want to find Jesus, folks? Gather in crowds of 2 or 3, at least. And in their midst, you shall find Jesus. Why? Because it's our chance to share the gospel. That's how we operate. That's how we've always been operating from the start. Gathering together. The churches are fantastic. Why? Because it gives us a chance to get an even bigger gathering when we can. But is it what's needed? It's not the building that's needed, it's the organization that it represents. The church is not the building, it's the people. But the church itself still needs to follow the will of God, the instructions in the Bible, who tells us to seek God. Always seek God first. Gathering her in 2 or 3s, and in my midst you shall find me. That doesn't say in groups of 200 or 300. That doesn't say in crowds of 1,000. That doesn't say in crowds of 100. The requirement is at least 2 to 3. So, is there a way to follow that and not break the rules currently? Well, it really depends where you live. It really depends where you live. Now, if you live in a place where this is wrong, to gather in crowds, of even to have a visitor, and you're being persecuted for it, that kind of matches what's in the Bible, right, folks? So if it's not happening in your life, if you're not having any persecution that comes at severe consequences, if you choose God over something, maybe you're sacrificing the wrong things. Because the Bible tells us what's going to happen. So if it doesn't match your life, well, what are you doing wrong? What are all these characters through the Bible that are experiencing this? What are they doing? They're never agreeing with the world and saying, oh, the world said this, I'll never do it. No. Saying, obey God first. Obey the lawful authorities is good, but obeying God is better. Love God. Love people. Do it again. All right, folks. Is there any other questions? I'll give it about a minute or so to see if there's any other questions. If there's any other questions, I'll gladly answer it. If not, we'll end our discussion for today. And I'm hoping to be able to have discussions and sermons like this a lot more often now, because I think this is a very important subject, something we need to share. We need to learn more about the Bible. And let's be honest, not all of us are geeks that are going to spend hours every day reading through the book, even if it means we're supposed to. Most of us, the grand majority of us, we don't have that time. So we count on our preachers, our pastors, our priests, our reverends, whatever it is, we count on them to learn about the Bible and to teach us about it. To see in our congregation and then around the world, around their community, what they're facing, and find something that would be inspirational, that would help them. Now, how do we find that? Well, if we try ourselves, I'm going to be honest, we're going to draw a big blank, and it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world. It's going to be a lot of research and a lot of work. Tells me that maybe that's not the best way. There's an alternative. Now, the alternative is for the men of the cloth to pray. Seek God honestly. Pray for your community. Cry. Weep. Weep for your community. Who here has not wept for their community at one point or another? Pastor Blatz, have you ever cried for your community? I've cried for my community plenty of times, and I do that every week and almost every day, to be honest, sometimes multiple times a day. It's horrible, some of the stuff that we're going through. But I pray and I weep to God, and God cannot resist the cry of the faithful. He won't leave us hanging. He never has, never will, never. We might not get what we wanted, but we got what we needed. And we might not understand that we needed it at the time, but we will. It'll come. Everything in its due time. So I would like to end the stream with two things. First, I'd like to end the stream with a quote. Wisdom is foolish to the fools. Fools are foolishness to the wise. Now, to end, I would like to show a video that I really liked. This is Crowder crushing snakes. So, there we go. As a gamer, this really gets my geek on. Like, big time. So we're going to put this full screen, folks, so you guys can see it properly. And I'm going to put the music loud because I love this song. There we go.